We're getting lighting tips from Master Photographer Huntington Witherill, an award-winning photographer who also shares his experiences working directly with Ansel Adams.
One of the key points with natural lighting is, of course, that the only control you have over it is to wait until it's correct before you press the shutter release.
Yeah.
There's very little that one can do to actually change the lighting on a particular scene. Now, this photograph that's up on the screen right now, one of the things that attracted, in fact, the thing that attracted me to this scene was the idea that there were several types of lighting within this very same scene. If you look at the foreground, there's a very harsh kind of strong directional light, sunlight coming from the right-hand side. And as you go toward the background, it becomes a very soft and sort of high-key lighting situation in the trees and the ridges receding in the background. And to me, that's what attracted me to this image, was that you're looking at several kinds of lighting, or at least a couple of different kinds of lighting, in the same scene. And so it was the light that really directed me toward the scene itself, and then the composition, trying to balance out these shadow forms and the rocks and the tree and ridges in the background. That was really where the composition comes in. Excellent.
So you get a kind of a merging here of lighting and composition, obviously working together in a photograph.
Right. And you know, the thing with light is you come back 5 minutes later and this scene doesn't exist because the light has changed. And so it really is, the light dictates the image more so than anything else in photography. It is really about light. This is a traveling along the Green River, heading from Interstate 70 toward Moab.
Oh, yes, I've been there.
A place called Fisher Tower. Those pinnacles in the center of the image are Fisher Tower. And from quite a ways upriver with a fairly long lens, I was able to, get this scene, which I think includes, I think it's the La Salle Mountains in the background. At any rate, the idea of these sort of repetitive receding lines, and again, the differences in the quality of light between the foreground and the distant ground is, to me, what attracted me to photograph this scene.
Yeah. Now, I have a question. On this image, did you visualize it as a black and white when you're composing it, or did you do that when you went back into your studio?
I envisioned it as a black and white image to begin with, but I always shoot digital images in color because in the conversion process, converting an image from color to black and white in post-processing, that gives you a great amount of latitude in terms of how that conversion takes place. In other words, I'm not a real big believer in, there are some cameras out there that will actually shoot in a black and white mode. I don't encourage it at all. I think you're far better off using a color image. For example, in this case, there's a lot of red in the rocks. So if I wanted to separate those rocks out, I could apply a filter after the fact to increase the contrast in the red rocks while not affecting the sky, for example. And that's something you couldn't do if you were just photographing in black and white to begin with.
I know you studied with Ansel and you did some work with him for a while, right?
Well, I worked as a workshop assistant.
Okay.
Essentially meant that you were there to take the workshop for free and you moved chairs around when asked to do so. So I was not a personal assistant to Ansel, but I did attend a number of Ansel Adams workshops in the early 70s, and I knew him and knew his wife quite well, and so he did have an influence on me, no question.
What would you say are some of the takeaways? What are some of the key points that you, from your experience working with him and being around him in his workshops, that really stand out for you?
Well, I think what stood out for me the most was his attention to detail. when you're dealing with photography, I think when you're dealing with any aspect of life, or light, it's the details that make all the difference. There's this tendency in this day and age, because of the automation that is built into a lot of cameras, particularly digital cameras, that people just kind of take their photographs rather casually and expect that the equipment will do a lot of the work for them.
Right.
And what I learned from Ansel was it's really all about what's in your eye, what's in your heart, and what's in your mind. That's what makes a great photograph, is bringing to bear all of those facilities, which include, emotion, but also attention to detail and craft. Craft, I think, is a very important part of photography. And when I produce a photograph, it's important to me that if I want people to be able to see the details in the dark areas of the photograph, I'm not going to produce a print that has solid blacks throughout the print.
Yeah.
You have solid black or you have pure white. Those two tonal values are really kind of anchors for the tonal array in an image. And neither one of those can produce detail. The only way you can have detail in a photograph is to have differences in tonal value represented so that you can see three-dimensional objects. For example, as we're looking at this image of the mountain here in the lower left, there's detail throughout all those dark areas in that
I
lower
see
part.
that.
If that was solid black, it would look just like flat as a tabletop.
Right.
There would be no undulation or dimension to it. Same thing with the clouds. If the clouds are pure white, they're just flat, like paper. And they don't produce any kind of a third dimension. So,
attention to detail. And I love what you said about, we have all these technical points of cameras and development and whatnot, but really it comes back to what you see, what you felt. I know Ansel quoted that from Alfred Stieglitz, who was kind of a mentor for him, right?
yes.
You see something that excites you and you try to convey to the viewer what you saw and felt, not just saw, right? You get that emotion in there too.
Right. I think one of the things Ansel was quick to point out was that if you take his photographs and go back to the actual spot where he stood and made the photograph, they probably wouldn't be very interesting to look at, the scenes themselves.
Yeah.
It's able to do by transforming those images from what the human eye sees in the scene and what the photographic process can do in order to enhance the internal contrasts and that sort of thing. So often, if you went to the place where Ansel had actually stood and taken some of his most famous photographs, you wouldn't even recognize it. You would look at the scene, you go, "Oh, this doesn't look like anything he photographed." But the fact is, it was what he was able to do to transform that scene into a photograph that made his work so special.
Those are some really fantastic points from Huntington Witherill. Be sure to put them into use right away and grab his article, The Strongest Way of Seeing. It's in the description. Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.